listening to Living with ADHD and CPTSD, available on Apple, Spotify, and wherever you get your podcast. Everybody, and welcome to another episode of Living with ADHD and CPTSD. Today I have a special episode. I have an interview with YouTube sensation and CPTSD/narcissism expert Lisa Romano. I had an amazing time doing this interview with her, and I am absolutely sure that you will enjoy it as well. So here we are, my interview with Lisa Romano. Narcissists are obviously someone or are people who have no ability to be or have empathy, and they are intentionally manipulative with their partners or with even within a group, depending on the situation, especially in a high school or a school or college. There's a lot of narcissism they're not even aware of it, but it's becoming more mainstream or more like public, especially now. We've obviously gone through a pandemic, and so with people having to live together, or when they're isolated due to the virus, there's a lot of couples out there who are obviously starting to learn that they're living with someone has got narcissistic behavior. And my question that I have and that I'd want to discuss with you, Lisa, is when narcissists, they don't just appear. There's obviously some way that they come into this world, like how they've been in their environment, or they grow up living with narcissists with their parents or with relatives. How do narcissists become, a narcissist? Like what factors are involved with making this happen? And the fact that they don't even know that they are, or they won't admit to themselves that they are. What is the process when it comes to how a narcissist is born, basically?
So I think that it's really difficult, right? Like you're in a relationship with someone and you have really great intentions, and in the beginning it's awesome, like it usually is with someone with high narcissistic traits. They mirror your empathy, they mirror your likes and dislikes, and you really feel seen, which activates your narcissism. Like, wow, I found somebody who sees me, and it feels great. Over time, however, if you're dealing with someone who is highly narcissistic, they start to devalue you, because there's this need to dominate and control the situation. So there's this power play going on, and it doesn't happen right away. And it can happen right away because they need to secure you and they need to gain your trust first. And so now you have this cognitive bias set up, like, well, no, this is a nice person. This person rescues dogs. This person feeds the hungry. So you have this idea or this perception of this person that is now conflicting with their actual actions, with their words. And it's really confusing because if you're a healthy person, you're self-reflective and you'll think, what did I do wrong?
Yeah.
And so you're looking at this person, or you minimize how you feel, or you make excuses for their behavior because you're always trying to go back to that honeymoon period. So it becomes addictive. We're chasing the heroin hit. If I do this, maybe I'll get that love back, or maybe she'll be happier, or maybe he'll be happier. So you're the one that is subjugating your needs. You don't even realize it's happening. And so it's difficult to come to the awareness that I'm in a toxic relationship. I'm not happy. Like, there's no fluidity in this relationship anymore. There's no trust. There's only distrust and fear and self-doubt and trepidation. And I'm constantly defending myself or seeking approval or deflecting criticism or feeling judged There's no accountability on my partner. Like my emotions are being annihilated day in and day out. So it's very courageous to walk through that maze and get to the other side and think, maybe my client or my partner has high narcissistic traits, and this is really what I'm dealing with. It's very heroic, because you are now in a conundrum, because a healthy person wants to work it out. But when you're with someone who has high narcissistic traits, there is no working it out, because
Yeah.
their perception is skewed. So to answer your question, how does one become a narcissist? It's not a black and white situation. It's very complex. There are children who are raised by parents who are entitled, who lack empathy, they're empathy impaired. So children are raised in a home where they hear the parents speaking in an entitled way.
Right.
They hear the parents speaking in a way that lacks empathy for others. They're around a lot of criticism. They're around a lot of entitlement. They are around a lot of judgment. And so the parents might even infuse the child with the idea that she's the prettiest, she's the smartest, she's the best, or he's the best. No one's going to be good enough for him. The mother and fathers who are not objectively child rearing their children and not teaching accountability for their actions. And on the flip side, their children can do no wrong. That's a scary mom, by the way. The scary mom is someone who's like, my kid never
Right.
does anything wrong. It's the teacher's fault. Or it's the kid next to them. I mean, those moms exist and those dads exist. And so
Yeah.
when a child is raised in that type of a home, this sense of entitlement, they can do no wrong. My child could do no wrong. The child is infused with, I'm better than you. This idea of power over,
Hmm.
it's infused in them. And then there are children who are so emotionally abandoned, so emotionally neglected, that they decide by the time they're 2, 3, 4, or 5 that, I'm not playing by these rules anymore. It's impossible to please anybody, so I'm not even going to try. So now it's like the way they get through the world is, no, you're wrong, and strong arming you and manipulating you so that they don't have to be vulnerable, because they learn that it's too scary to be vulnerable. So it becomes this cat and mouse game with affection and emotions. And eventually, however, it comes out in the wash. Eventually, in time, you'll realize that you can't get on the same page with the narcissist, where they actually can slip into your skin, imagine and feel what you feel, and then feel what perhaps their passive aggressive comment or their stonewalling or even their triangulation or some form of devaluing you. They can't get to the point where they can accept responsibility that their actions, some character flaw in them, cause pain in you. Nor can they get to the level of, I'm so sorry, that's never going to happen. They can't. They can't
Right.
integrate these negative characteristics, so they push them out on you. You're the one that has these traits. You're the one that's wrong.
Yeah. Right. I see that personally, and I also see that in a lot of other people out there. And I'm not sure if you've seen it, but I've seen a YouTube video. It was a movie that this lady had created about narcissism, and it was like seen from two sides. It was seen from like the person, kind of like from the narcissist's point of view, and
Mm-hmm.
then at the end they showed it from the actual person's point of view. And it's just like you're saying, like the person, they would have something that would be great, and then their partner would turn it around on them and make them feel bad.
Mm-hmm.
Or like they would, like they'd have a drink, and then, or a couple nights, and they would find a way to make it look like they're an alcoholic and turn it against them. And everything, it was constantly like negative, and making them feel bad, and then instilling false beliefs and thoughts into their head. Like it was reinforced that the person started to believe it and say, what if maybe I am being an alcoholic? Maybe I'm gonna I'm not a good person. And then all of a sudden they show it, and there was things in the video that you didn't see at first because it was from a different point of view. And it was literally like them being physically abused and mentally, like, manipulated emotionally, and it was just, and of course the whole goal was to make that person doubt themselves, and literally it's almost like it's kind of like a mental, like they're reprogramming their mentally so that they'll completely just trust them and believe everything they say, and then that's when they leave, or that's when they've had enough, because they've had their fill and there's nothing more to do, so they leave the person completely broken, and they keep
Sometimes
thinking,
they don't leave.
yeah, like it's their fault, right? Like, what, I lost this person, I did something wrong, it was me that they left, instead of it being, you did nothing wrong. They were intentionally taking advantage of you, and they manipulated you, and they got exactly what they wanted. And it's a pattern that they continue to do. It's just, they're so good at it. Like, they're, unless you can pick it out, if it's so hard, and there are so many people out there, and it happens, it's not just with women, of course, it happens with men as well, is that they can't see it ahead of time, and that's the problem, is that it's so tricky, because they don't have a clue that they're dealing with someone like that. And it's really sad, because it's so new still in society. And yeah, it's really
Narcissism
sad.
has always been. It's just, I think that I'm so
Yeah,
grateful that gaslighting is the word of the year, right?
yeah,
So thank you. That's awesome, because it's like, what's gaslighting? And now we can have these open conversations. Whereas, when my mother was growing up, and if a man was domestically abusive, women didn't really have a voice, right? So they didn't have it. They didn't have a platform to say, oh, this is happening. If their husbands were alcoholics, they didn't have a platform. If a
yeah,
husband was being domestically abused, there was no platform. He didn't talk about it. He was embarrassed. He was ashamed.
yeah,
So with the internet, and with the information, the technology that we have, we're able to talk about it. And I think that's awesome. So there is more awareness than ever. And I think that's a good thing, but that doesn't solve the problem
no,
of narcissism, because narcissism now, because of social media, is actually on the rise. So there is a far less likelihood for for young adults graduating from college to understand the value of community. It's about, when am I getting the Ferrari? When
yeah,
am I getting the big house? When am I making my music video? When am I making my first 25 mil? It's all about materialistic um, advantages. And
absolutely,
so as we move into, and social media, and even on TikTok and YouTube and all these platforms, they're really promoting the kids who are 18 years old and driving around in Ferraris, right?
yeah,
Um, and so we have to really be careful about how we show up in society, what we ingest and what we digest, what we participate in, so that we don't get sucked into this in terms of the materialism and the superficiality. It's really important, because
absolutely,
superficiality and materialism, it goes hand in hand with narcissism,
yes,
right? So I think that's one way that we can keep ourselves in check. And in terms of relationships, I think when we are struggling with CPTSD, when
hmm,
we're struggling with codependency, when we're struggling with childhood trauma, we are far more susceptible. We are like, we lack the boundaries someone who doesn't come from trauma has. And so we are far more susceptible to someone who is highly narcissistic, because we come in shame based. We come in doubting ourselves. We come into relationships needing and wanting to feel seen and feel heard. We come
yeah,
in the pretzel. I will twist myself into a pretzel to make you happy, right? So we are at a disadvantage. So unfortunately, when we talk about, how do people find each other? How does an adult daughter with a violent violent, alcoholic, narcissistic father, how does she walk into a room full of 300 men and walk out with the alcoholic?
Yeah, I know. That
There's
is
an
a big
attraction there.
question. Yeah.
There is an attraction, and the attraction is familiarity. But
Yeah.
familiarity isn't always good. It's just like seeks like. It's
Yeah.
the way of nature. Flamingos don't mate with pigs, right? So
No.
no, seriously. If you have a sea of flamingos and you drop a peacock in a sea of flamingos, and 3 days later drop off, a peahen, that peacock's going to mate with the peahen in a sea of flamingos. There's this an attraction happening that is like seeking like. And in my work, what I try to do is listen, this is narcissistic, this is codependent, you're going to be more susceptible to this. Let's identify the traits of codependency. Let's identify the traits of narcissism. Let's identify what happens in a home where you grew up feeling unseen, a home that's unpredictable, a home that's emotionally neglectful and abusive. Let's identify. Let's categorize all of these situations so that we, from a higher state of awareness, can understand this invisible attraction that we have to abusive people.
Right.
So now that
Absolutely.
we understand, wow, it's not really me, there's something really supernatural happening, right?
Yeah.
And I can have some control over it, the more I gain clarity around the dynamics. Because when you are in a relationship with a narcissist, especially if you have codependency, you have a fawning tendency, CPTSD issues, if you are a little bit vulnerable and insecure about who you are and your worth and your value, then all of that is going to be very problematic for you as in the process of being abused,
Yeah.
because the process of being abused creates shame. You've already got shame. Now it's highly activated. Now it's an emotional flashback. Now it's an emotional trigger. Now she's not mommy. She's not your wife or your girlfriend. She's mommy, and now you're behind the eight ball emotionally because now you're a child. And this person is so much more powerful for you emotionally. And it's hard for you to gain the strength and the emotional wherewithal to say, wait a minute, I simply do not deserve to be treated this way. It's very difficult. So
Yeah.
when you come from that background and you're being abused, it can go on
Hmm.
indefinitely. And so, the cognitive dissonance is real. Gaslighting is real. It's the intention of a narcissist, although they do it so automatically and by default that I don't think they ever even, I think they just steamroll you. They don't even question that they lied to you and they're trying to F with your head. They don't even care.
Yeah.
It's just, I won the argument and you think you're wrong. Yay for me.
Yeah. Yeah. I have a lot of personal experience with that. And I just wish I had realized this a long time ago rather than recently, because I could have
Yeah.
avoided a lot. But you're exactly right. Like I know 100% what you're talking about with someone who's already dealing with CPTSD and getting into a relationship that unfortunately happens to be someone who is a narcissist.
Hmm.
You're automatically like I went through it a few times, and you don't see you can't see it ahead of time. It's just
No.
not possible. And I didn't know until after that I for the third time I was in the same situation where I was at the point where I felt this something's wrong, but I don't know if there's gonna be anything better. I'm
Right.
I'm scared. Like I don't if I leave, is there gonna be something better? And it was literally reinforced, right? Like
Yeah.
it was in, enforced by that person saying, you're lucky that I've stuck around. You're lucky, like no one else is going to put up with this. And so I'm sitting here going, I don't like this. This isn't great, but what am I going to do in the future? Like I'm going to screw it up again, so you're at the point where you're thinking you're never going to be good enough for anybody. You might as well just deal with it, and maybe it'll get better, like you're hoping for the dream come around, the movie story ending that nobody ever really actually experiences. And yeah, it's really unfortunate, and nobody unfortunately they don't figure it out ahead of time. They learn after, because they've been able to be out of it for a while, and they have a friend who goes, "This is what happened. Did you see what's going on?" And they go, "Oh yeah," but unless they actually do the work and they heal or figure it out, they're just going to fall back into
Correct.
another one.
We are our patterns, and we are
Yeah.
our habits of thinking and feeling. And when we have CPTSD, we don't feel good enough, and there
No.
is shame, and we don't feel seen, and we've been missed certain milestones, and we
Yeah.
don't trust. We don't trust that we're worthy to be loved. We don't trust that we are enough. We don't trust that someone's going to hold us in the palm of their hand and love us forever just as we are. We don't trust that we're forgivable. We don't trust that we're lovable. We don't trust that we are enough to have someone stick around. We don't trust. So, and that is what gets exploited in a narcissistic relationship. So that's why
Yeah.
it's so important. Those of us who come from dysfunctional homes, toxic homes, and there are so many different types of toxic homes too. You know, you don't have to be hit and verbally abused to come from a toxic home. It just has to be crazy. It has to
Yeah.
be unpredictable. People have to be too busy to notice whether or not you're vomiting in the corner, or you didn't get enough sleep, or you're hungry, right? That's abusive because you're
Yeah.
not getting your needs met as a child. So, how do I, as an adult, go into the world and feel like, yeah, I can trust that I'm enough, and know that if you're being abusive, you can go scratch your ass. I'm out of here.
Yeah.
I don't have it, but I have to develop it. I have to develop it, because if I don't develop it, then I'm always going to be this walking magnet for this narcissist who lives on planet Earth to exploit those wounds in other people. And that's why I love doing what I do. And that's why it's my mission to help people wake up, because you can't fix a hole in the wall you don't see. So that's why
Mm.
for me, I start with a lot of how I draw people into my content is through the lens of, are you the adult child of an alcoholic or a narcissistic parent? Were you emotionally abused and neglected as a child? People can identify that a lot easier and quicker than, are you being abused by a narcissist? I had one woman tell me that, I just thought I had a bad marriage. What do you mean? You know, like, I just thought it
Yeah.
was going to get better. I thought it was the kids. I thought that it was overworked. I thought because I put a couple of pounds on that I wasn't the same woman he married. All of this rationalization for the bad marriage. So a lot of people can't see that it's narcissism,
Right.
that it's abusive. But if we can help people with identifying, like, well, what kind of a home did you come from? Lots of cases, that's why we end up in narcissistic relationships. But again, it's not a black and white issue, because you can come from a very loving home, two parents that were highly attentive, and you go into the world, you know, with your guitar singing Kumbaya, thinking everybody's like you.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And now you have high empathy and you're like, oh, you know, it's like Beauty and the Beast. Like, oh, this poor beast has a thorn in his or her paw, you know, and I have to love them and I can
Yeah.
see the pain and this person needs to be loved. I had one woman who was a brilliant attorney and she said, well, everybody needs to be loved, talking about a highly domestically abusive, narcissistic boyfriend.
Mm.
Everybody needs to be loved. And what about you?
Yeah.
But worried
Absolutely.
about him. And no matter what abuse he gave her, she could rationalize it. He had a bad childhood. His mother was a drug addict. She didn't exist. She didn't exist. Total exploitation, lack of boundaries, lack of self-love, and let's listen, you're a good-hearted person. It takes a lot of courage to walk away from someone that you know had a bad childhood and as a result is a narcissist.
Yeah.
It takes a lot of courage. But you know what? That's why they tell us to put our oxygen mask on first. Because if you don't put your life jacket on and start swimming to shore, you're both going down. You're both going
Absolutely.
down. And you could do you can't be of service to anyone, not in your community, not to yourself, not to friends. You can't be of service to anyone when that narcissist is wearing you down. That's what they do. No, thank you. No more.
Absolutely. Yeah, you're absolutely right. Like I know what you mean, and I just like I was convinced early on that the result, like where my CPTSD had come from, was from my father specifically. That's what I was convinced to, and because I was so scared of, arguing or disagreeing and not realizing what was actually going on at the same time, that I was convinced. I was almost like I was forced to believe it.
Yep.
And then all of a sudden, you're looking at the reality and you're seeing the whole picture, and you go, no, you know what? That actually isn't the truth. It's just
Wow.
what it was just she was using it as a way of separating, right? Like it's like that person
Alienation.
that yeah, that narcissist, it's like they want you all to themselves. So
Correct.
they want to eliminate all the external factors that could tear you away.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember that. And then the thing that really stood out, which was it was wild, is that I would talk to the therapist, I would talk to my friends, and one of them just happens to be a psychologist, and talking about this, what was going on, and they were all say, yeah, you're in a situation that's not safe, and it's harmful, and she's being emotionally abusive, and I think she's a narcissist, and blah blah blah. And then I would come back, and carefully chosen words would
Yeah.
say something, and she would twist it and say, oh, we're just in a unique relationship, and all the stuff that you put me through was, you've so I have a right to be upset, and I have a right to be this way. And it's like, and it got to the point where all of a sudden I'm going, you know what, you have a point. I did a lot of this, and I am to blame. And now all of a sudden I'm going, this was all just manipulation to make me drop my defenses so that you'd have an advantage, and then go full on into it. And yeah, it's amazing how you just see it, and then
Well, what I'm getting from you is that your mother primed you for this relationship.
yeah,
Yeah, it sounds like the manipulation tactics, the doubting yourself, putting a woman's word before your own word, feeling subordinate perhaps to a female in this type of relationship where she's exploiting her son. And now moving into relationships with women, you've got to be super careful, in my opinion, that you don't put just that when you're dealing with the woman, it's like we are equals,
yeah,
right? Like, I don't need your approval. I know who I am. I'm going to be clear about what I see and how I feel, so that the relationship energy doesn't get muddied up with past patterning from mom. Narcissistic mothers, or mothers who are emotionally immature, even codependent moms can struggle with feeling like their children, specifically their sons, are leaving them, right? This
right,
abandonment that they have. And the son can become a replacement for the father. And how else to do that but to turn the son against the father? So now mom has complete dominance over the son, but that's a very selfish mother who is not putting the needs of her son first. And if she's not aware of her habits and her tendencies, and she can't pedal it back, because mothers aren't perfect either, right?
no,
But
no,
a mom who can't pedal it back is going to continue that behavior and feel entitled to glom onto her son and make him her everything. So now the son becomes the caretaker. The son becomes the person who's supporting the mom. So there's role reversal. So now, in that situation, you're exploited. You can't have a relationship with your father because that threatens your attachment to your mom. So as a man, it becomes like I can't even have a relationship with me because it threatens my relationship with her.
Yeah. Yeah, I see what you're
So
saying.
yeah. So I have to, so it's like, doesn't matter, male or female. I have to, because a narcissistic parent will sever you from, and it's not uncommon for a codependent or someone suffering from with CPTSD, and it shows up as fawning, for instance, or a combination of one of the four
Yeah.
responses. It's not uncommon for a codependent who has been raised by unhealthy parents and has developed codependency as ways to survive and avoid abandonment trauma and not rock the boat, especially with mom. It's not uncommon for them to attract another child of a narcissistic family with high narcissistic traits.
Yeah. Yeah,
In
absolutely.
my situation, my ex, in my opinion, was raised to feel entitled. The family was better. So the women in the family that three sons, the women that married these sons were treated less than, and the sons were encouraged to treat the women less than.
Yeah.
So here I come in and I attract someone from a narcissistic family, but the dynamics, they mirror each other to one extent, but now it's a codependent with a narcissist.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a very bad trait, and
Ooh,
it's quite common, unfortunately.
yeah,
I
yeah.
know, like I was see my issue. It wasn't like emotional neglect. It wasn't any physical. It was a social aspect.
Mm, mm,
Um, I I grew up with two parents who don't exactly have the best education. They didn't
right.
exactly come from the best, like most fortunate families, right? They were large families, and so I always grew up with a lot of like lacking certain social skills and social
Mm-hmm.
understanding, and that's what bit me in the ass when I grew up. And
Yeah.
so that's where my lack of knowledge and understanding came to harm me and people out there, especially in school, and then certain individuals took advantage of that.
Sure.
And like I I understood an early age where I stood at, like, and it's just that I didn't have any understanding or skills to use it to my advantage. So
Mhm.
unfortunately, I was quite naive, and it hurt me because people took advantage of it, and my CPTSD that developed from all this, it made me quite vulnerable,
Oh,
unfortunately.
yes. Now,
Yeah.
did you said earlier that there were issues with mom, that mom, you felt at least that there was a story that was being put out there to separate you from your dad? Did that come from mom?
No, that was from my ex.
Oh,
Yeah,
I'm sorry,
sorry.
I
It's
misunderstood.
okay. Yeah, my ex was the one that had almost convinced me that the the root of everything came from him, like that, right?
Oh,
And so that it developed, but and it was because she saw tendencies and behaviors in him that were really just poor, like
mhm,
poorly social, very like he's obviously not perfect. He's got a temper. He was raised in a family that was poor. He didn't
mhm,
exactly have a good
I
upbringing, and he had
understand.
his own issues. But she there was something that she wanted to separate from me because
Mhm.
she wanted me to be better and to be right, but at the same time she was using it to alienate myself from
Wow, yeah.
them.
Yeah, yeah,
And
I get that.
yeah,
Yeah, I apologize. I thought when we
that's
were
okay.
talking, yeah, I just want to clarify. It's like I thought what you were saying was that when you said she, I just assumed it was
Mm,
mom was trying to separate you from dad. It was like an
yeah,
alienation type thing. See, that's the thing with a narcissist. A narcissist, like my ex would say, I rescued you from your family.
yeah,
So now it's like, and like you, my parents were poor. they were both their parents, both my parents were raised by alcoholics in the 40s. I
Mm,
mean, it was really, really, really bad. My grandparents never graduated from high school or actually grammar school. My parents didn't graduate from high school, neither one of them. So that was used against me.
yeah.
So, so again, it's like a narcissist will exploit shame. And if you have any vulnerability, that's why I always say to people, don't tell anybody about your boo-boos until you're sure you can trust them. Because a
Absolutely.
narcissist is going to take anything. So if you say, for instance, like for me, oh, my dad was raised by an alcoholic, and, you know, he wasn't an educated person, right? So that's a vulnerable thing to say. So a narcissist waits to use that against you, to
Yeah.
knock you down a little bit, to make you feel less than them. So
Absolutely.
now, aren't you the lucky one for having them in your life?
Yeah.
There's,
No, I
aren't you?
completely see that. Yeah. Yeah.
Aren't you lucky they tolerate you? You should be lucky that they tolerate you with all your stuff.
Yeah.
And it gets inside your head, and you actually think, I'm so lucky that I have this person in my life. And that's a power game. You don't even realize it. It's a power. No one should ever make you feel that way. But they
Yeah.
distort it and they actually make you feel bad about yourself and then gain your adoration by, oh, I'm so lucky that she's with me, or I'm so lucky that he didn't leave me knowing about my family.
Yeah. No kidding.
Yeah.
Yeah. I totally see what you're saying. I think I do have one advantage, and I think there's probably people out there that are like this, where I'm I'm naturally just I'm not someone who's easily convinced, right? Like I'm a very, oh, I can't even think of the word at the moment, but when there were certain things occurring, I wouldn't just go, oh yeah, you're right, I see what you're saying. There would be
Right.
that sense of, I hear you, but I don't know if you think you know what you're talking about,
Oh,
right?
that's
Like there was, and I could, and there was like this part of me that was like, I don't like the fact that you're constantly knocking them. I
hmm
see a point what you're telling me, but I don't completely believe you, and I think you're just trying to, I think you just need to open your mind up a bit. So I was never fully convinced, and I think this was why it never got to its full extent, like this relationship, because I'm a very strong-willed person, and yeah, I was never completely convinced of what she was trying to, you know, get me to see.
that's
And
awesome.
yeah,
That's great. Good for
but I
you.
know, yeah, thank you. I don't think that's a very common trait though, because most people, like, I don't want to say most, but there's a lot of people out there that sadly can be easily convinced, especially if they come from a vulnerable situation
hmm
and they see this as an opportunity to break free or to move forward. And then after they've done that, now all of a sudden it's like they turn the switch on and they take advantage of it, and then now you're going, what happened, right? It's almost like you just wake up from a coma going, where have I been for 10
Yeah.
years?
It's wild. It's wild.
Yeah.
And I think we have, and conversations like this are helpful, right? Because
Yeah.
it's like, oh, if someone really loved me, they they wouldn't revel in insulting my family.
Yeah.
Like if my brother's abusive and and I'm allowing it, it's different for a partner to say, are you okay with being spoken to that way? There's some, what do you mean? Because sometimes the abuse in families is just so the norm that members of the family don't see it. And then someone
Yeah.
comes in and says, I don't know, how'd you feel about that? But it's great to acknowledge the difference between someone who's trying to separate you from people that love you and people that you love and that you trust, because that's what a narcissist does. They begin to isolate you from your friends. And
Yeah.
what's really hokey pokey is that when you meet a narcissist, they love your friends. They can't wait to meet your family.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Over time, it's they here come the insults and, Over time, here comes the comments about your friend. Well, I don't like your friend. I don't think your friend likes me, or your friend's rude to me, or I don't like this and I don't like that. And what's wrong with you that you like that person? I can't believe you hang out with those people. And then you start to question yourself, and you fear abandoning this person. And they also train you to be afraid of a negative outcome, because if you push a narcissist too far, the insults are coming.
Yeah.
The drama is coming. The I'm packing my bags and I'm leaving you is coming. So they actually train you to fear a negative outcome. So psychologically, pain versus pleasure, that's not worth it. We just won't go.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. You're right. It was to the point where I learned to just stop fighting it.
Yes.
But then at the same time, I started to learn I couldn't win. No matter what I
Yes.
tried, I just couldn't win.
Double bind.
And yeah,
You're damned if you do and damned if you don't.
exactly. But yeah, I think it was just to the point where I was in that stage of, I don't think I'm going to find anything better. So I was like, I gave up. I just went, well, I'm just going to deal with it.
Yeah.
or maybe I'll fix myself and then it'll all get better. Right. It was like this, you're blinded and you're starting to believe BS because it's the only thing you think that's going to work because you're afraid to
Yeah.
leave.
Well, I think also if you think about childhood, if you felt like this is the best it's going to get, or you know, I guess this is
Yeah.
it for me, you know, and you weren't able to develop self-efficacy, you weren't able to develop um, self-confidence, and you weren't able to develop a healthy ego boundary where you're able to say, this is who I am, and this is what I think, and this is what I feel, in spite of what you think, right? So when we feel so isolated and so vulnerable because we feel so different, regardless of why, we are more likely in adulthood to settle for what shows up.
Yeah.
So
That's
it's
true.
hard. I mean, I settled because I was conditioned to think that I wasn't good enough.
Right.
And when I began to realize what I was settling for, and this was going to be my life full time, and then I traced it back to, you've always settled because you've always felt like the ugly duckling. You've always felt like the oddball in social situations. You were never accepted by your peer group, not really. And when you were, they beat you up, they threatened you, they abused you,
Yeah.
so I never really felt like I fit in. So settling was like, well, it's better than being alone. And that was
Hmm.
very much part of my healing and recovery, understanding the process of by which I ended up feeling like you, like, well, I guess this is the best it's going to be. In my case, it was like, now I got 3 kids. Where am I going?
Right.
That really played in my head. Like, is it really going to get better? Um, but then when I understood the codependency part, the childhood programming part, and the codependent narcissistic dynamic, I was like, wait a minute, like, what am I programming my children for? Oh no,
Mm-hmm.
I cannot represent not enoughness for my children. I have to represent enoughness, and I have to find myself and love myself and make decisions based on self-love and self-respect. I have to walk into the abyss of the unknown. And when you've been isolated as a child, like it sounds like you may have been, or I don't mean to assume anything, but I get the sense that
That's
you
fine.
felt isolated.
Well,
Yep, you did.
yeah, I never really had, I, I'm not sure what it was. That was such a long time ago, but I have early memories in preschool of being rejected
Hmm.
by my classmates and feeling
Yeah.
really bad and
Mhm.
not knowing why.
Yeah.
And I don't think I really got any sort of proper, like, I want to say education or
Yeah.
educated about it,
Mhm.
and so I just felt, and then it kind of programmed me
Yeah.
early on, saying, well, you're people, there's something wrong. I did
Exactly.
something bad. And so it just never got, no one ever sat me down and said and reinforced positive, you
Right.
know, to say, oh, you're a great kid. There's nothing wrong with you. You know, some people are gonna be this way. Like it just right from the beginning, it was like there's I'm different, or I'm
Yep.
not a good kid. Why are people treating me this way? Why am I feeling like nobody wants to be around? Nobody wants to be a friend, you know, like, and it
Yep.
just sunk in, and
Yep.
it was never taken out before it was able to get roots
Yes.
in that in my brain. So
Festers. It festers
yeah,
in your soul. It festers in your spirit. It
yeah,
festers in your language. It festers in the way you carry yourself throughout the world. Definitely my story too. And as a teenager in relationships, I mean, I would have twisted myself into into a pretzel to get a boy to like notice me.
yeah,
And never real always living in fear, like you're gonna find out that there's something really wrong with me. You're gonna find out, and that's when you're gonna leave me. And that was why my tolerance level for bullshit was so high. I was like, there's this dirty little secret, and I don't want you, I don't know what it is. I don't know what it is. I have no
yeah,
idea what it is, but it must be bad because I don't fit in anywhere, right? But I
yeah,
will say that that allowed me growing up that way and coming through the veil of unconsciousness and living above the veil of consciousness. It's like I have such empathy for people who that is their story. I
yeah,
remember very clearly the memories that I went through as a child, and those memories have helped me figure out how I ended up where I ended up. So the wounded inner child in me has my full attention these days, and I feel like I'm home now. So now I'm not afraid of being alone. Now I'd
yeah,
rather be alone with my inner child and kick up my heels, to Tavares disco music in my kitchen, making myself some broccoli and garlic, than
nice,
be in some relationship where I'm being judged and projected upon and minimized and devalued. I'm done. I'd rather be alone in a happy space. Me and
yeah,
my inner child, and being of service to others.
absolutely. I agree. I've got a new chapter coming in my life. Like
Yeah.
I've got a fantastic place that I'm moving into. I'm not alone. I do have my dog. You know,
Yep.
it's there's limitations there, but still.
That's right.
And
A form of
I've got a good circle of friends who are caring and helpful. So it's not like I'm starting from scratch, but I don't see it as an ending. I see it
Mhm.
as starting a new wave, like, and I know there's going to be days where I'm going to feel, you know, you're going to think back and you're going to kind of feel alone, or you're going to feel regret possibly, but I'm going to the whole purpose is to start over and to work on what I know I can do, and then use that to heal the pain, right? Like use it to my advantage, and then and then learn how to. I want to guess the use is to exploit it so that it works to my advantage,
Mhm.
because
Mhm.
I know better now, today, better than ever, what my qualities are and what I have to offer. I just need to heal that child and to
Yep.
say, hey, look, you know, not everybody's going to agree, not everybody's going to like you, but that doesn't mean that you're a bad person or that there's a problem. It just That's just reality. Is you're never going to please everybody. Like there's always going to be someone out there that's going to think there's something wrong, or that you're not a good person, or and a lot of it could just be on their own issues. So
Yeah, and part of what I needed to work on was recognizing that all of these experiences of not feeling like I fit in, simple experience. I was the oldest, and the kids on my block, the one family that my family clicked with had a little girl and a little boy, and they clicked with my brother and sister. So I was the third out.
right,
So that consistent being left home in the summertime, over time, no one wants me. And that feeling sinks in. And we are developing beliefs about ourselves before we're pre-verbal. And
Mm.
eventually, when we develop language, it's very black and white, bad, good. They want me, they don't want me. So this very, very early language becomes a program. Well, they don't want me, that means I'm bad. And that becomes rooted in the subconscious mind, and it
Right.
festers and it festers. And we're hypnotized before the age of 7. We're in a hypnotic brainwave state up until the age of 7. So those early experiences, they matter, of feeling rejected. For me, I had to comfort that little girl and say, you know, it's everything you're feeling is valid, and that's what little girls think, and that's what little boys think, because their language is so limited when you're little. So you adopted these ideas, but they're not true.
Yeah.
But they're not true, and you are enough. And that did hurt, and I wish it didn't happen, but it did. But you need to understand that you don't have to carry that anymore. I call it the sweater of
Yeah.
shame, the SOS, the sweater of shame. And I have an exercise where I put a sweater on and I have all these labels pinned to it. And actually in one of my books, Codependent Now What, I think. And
Oh,
I
wow.
would rehearse it, and I would sit in front of a mirror with a candle, and I would talk to my inner child and say, you don't have to carry this anymore. And I would, one by one, I would take the pins off the jacket, and eventually I took the sweater off and pushed it across the table, like, no more sweater of shame. It's not my shame. It's not my shame.
Wow.
And someone should have intervened also. When I was in first grade, a teacher told my mother, like, I think Lisa needs a therapist, because it was so obvious that I was withdrawing and I didn't feel
Right.
like I fit in. And then what do kids do? When they see the kid that's withdrawing, they pick on the kid that's withdrawing. That's
Yeah.
just what a lot of kids do. So it just created this divide and just reinforced, I don't belong here. I'm dropped off on planet Earth. Why am I here? You know, um,
Mm-hmm.
and if my mom didn't get a therapist for me, and I think it's because
Mm.
she was afraid of what I might say, in my
Right.
opinion, because she was very, very abrasive, very emotionally abusive. So um, I know that the little girl inside of me suffered greatly, and she was alone, and she carried the weight of the world on her shoulders. And I celebrate her, and I think, what a strong little girl to hold on, to not to be afraid and know I can't crawl into my mother's lap, or to be afraid I can't tell my aunt what's going on, it's going to upset my mom, or I can't upset the people in my life that's going to reinforce that I'm bad. How courageous are little people in these situations? How strong are we really to go through this alone
Yeah. No kidding.
and to survive? It's pretty amazing when you think about what so many adult children have gone through alone. So here's an opportunity to go back in time and, from a higher state of awareness, nurture that little boy or nurture that little girl with all the love, that he or she needed. And I would suggest for you, moving into your new apartment, is to get out those pictures of you when you were 3. Get out that 3-year-old nursery school picture and love on that little boy, and just honor him and celebrate him, and put pictures of him all around the house. And I love you.
Yeah.
I love you. You're good. I love you. I love you. I love you. I'll never abandon you. Like, reprogram, that narrative, wherever that language pattern is held within your being. Reprogram it daily, daily, daily.
Yeah. I see what you're saying. You're absolutely right. Because I think, like, I've been the type that never likes to be in pictures. I don't like having my picture taken. And it's kind of, I always thought it was just because I didn't like the way I looked. But as it turns out, I think it because I feel like somebody's going to see the photo, and there's going to have some negative tone
Yeah.
that's going to come. And then I'm going to feel like, why do I bother bringing these out? People are just going to have something negative to say, and so I try to avoid, there's no point in
You
having my photo taken.
there's some I don't know, intuitively, I'm feeling you've had experiences, either Either that was the narrative of the inner child, or you had consistent experiences where you felt when people looked at you, or you were around people where there was a rejection of you.
Absolutely.
So now
Yeah.
you're protecting yourself. Well, I'm not going to give you an opportunity to see a picture of me and reject me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I, this is where, see, I always knew that I was bullied and picked on and ridiculed
Mhm.
in school, and it happened from start to end. So it wasn't like it just happened somewhere.
Yeah.
And I always knew that it was there. I just
Yeah.
didn't know how, to what degree it affected my life,
Right.
because you don't, it's, they always say, oh, kids are just kids. And, in school, they're just, that's just the way kids are. There's always teasing and picking on, and there's always cliques, and the jocks hang out with the jocks, and the nerds hang out with the nerd, and so on. And then they're always, and I sit there and I go, that's such crap.
Bullshit.
Yeah,
It's
exactly. It's
bullshit.
bullshit, because it's it's reinforced by
Correct.
parents and by media, and just it's a historical thing. Like, if I don't know, I don't know if it'll ever truly get fixed, or if it's ever going to stop, because unless it's going to take a generation or two to even get close to it. But
Yeah.
yeah, like,
It's
it
not
was one of
okay.
those. No, absolutely not. And unfortunately, I grew up in a time when bullying wasn't taken seriously.
Yep.
And it was more so the person who was being bullied that faced retribution than the bullier. Because I
Correct.
remember I was afraid of standing up for myself, because the only
Yep.
thing I thought is, oh, I'm going to get suspended, or I'm going to get kicked out of school because I stood up for myself.
So
And then
why
what's going
bother?
to happen to them? Yeah, why bother?
Why advocate for myself? Same thing in a
Yeah.
relationship. It becomes a pattern. Why advocate for myself? Right. So your experiences in childhood, why advocate for myself? It becomes, that's what I'm trying to say. It's this unconscious language pattern
Yeah.
that we have, this relationship experience we have with the 3D world. Like, why bother? Right. I'm only going to get punished more. So why bother? And that's really what we have to overcome, is like, it
Yeah.
matters. You know why I bother? You know why I stand up for myself? Because I have a right to. And I'm an
Hmm.
individual and I have feelings. And if we don't gel and you're a bully, well, I don't want a bully in my life anymore. I
No.
want a kind person in my life. And so we want to make sure that we all have these patterns, for, I've coached so many people, thousands of people, and it's
Yeah.
so interesting that in the course of a conversation, you'll hear that, what like with you, like, why bother? So even in your relationship, why bother? You have to know that in your relationships, it matters to bother. In other words, like, you matter. You were supposed to matter in high school. Parents were supposed to advocate for you. Maybe they didn't know. A teacher was supposed to advocate for you. A school district was supposed to advocate for you, right? And that gives you the confidence to advocate for you. But that if that doesn't happen and you don't learn that you matter, then this becomes a pattern of why bother.
Yeah.
In my in with Interesting with my brother and I, my brother was a very sensitive young boy, and it irritated the shit out of my father.
Mm.
And in school, he was bullied because he was sensitive and he was picked on terribly.
Yeah.
And I didn't fit in either because I was a tomboy and I was strong and I wasn't very cute. The boys didn't know what to do with me. If you punched me, I
Yeah.
punched you back. You punch me, I punch you back. If you make fun of me, I'm not gonna laugh, and I'm not one of these little girls that and go hide in the corner. That's just not me. So my brother didn't fit in, and I didn't fit in, and so the two of us got bullied tremendous so bad. But I ended up being the one that beat the boys up who were trying to beat my brother up. So it's so odd when it comes to children, and parents have to get better at this, and teachers have to be taught.
Yeah.
A boy hit me, I'll never forget. His name was Timothy. He hit me so hard one day, and I hit him back so hard that I saw his shoulder go limp. But I was terrified because I knew, here it
Wow.
comes.
Yeah.
I ran to the principal's office, and you know what she told me? She laughed at me. When boys hit girls, that means they like them. I went
Yeah,
like this, Russ. I was like, ugh, crushed, crushed. You don't understand. I'm getting beat up. I'm getting spit at. I'm getting chased home from school. And you just told me that this is because they like me. So now I'm frivolous. I'm a silly girl. And I have, why bother? Why
I
bother?
know. There's a scene at the beginning of a movie that came out, I don't know, 10 years ago. He's Just Not That Into You,
Yes.
where the little girl is going up to her mother crying and saying, he hit me. And then she says, oh, that just means that he likes you. And she's got that confused look on her face, like,
Yep. What?
what? And I,
Exactly.
yeah, like I see the point of it, but at the same, like, I think those kind of movies need to they need to make more movies. If they're going to do stuff like that, they need to make videos and movies where they actually face reality of what it really is, not
Correct.
not go to fall back on society and say, oh yeah, this is what it means, like, or, and I know there's all sorts of examples, but it needs to start somewhere, I think. But
Yeah.
and in my opinion, it needs to start within the parents, because obviously the kid is, the parents are the first people that kid knows and grows up with and learns his boundaries and what's right and wrong. And
Correct.
but and that they need the reinforcement, like they go to school and they get bullied or they get picked on because they have glasses, or they're, I don't know, they're shy or something. And if there's nobody there to tell them, this, it's okay that you wear glasses, or it's okay that you're shy, don't worry about it, and not let them be, to feel that there's something wrong with them, like
Correct.
they like, I think that was the one thing, like that was the other problem, is that I had parents that had two different complete opposite point of views or
Right.
feelings on things. I had a
Right.
father whose instinct was, if he hits you, hit him back.
Right.
And then I
Right.
had a mother who was no, that's not right. Don't do that. Don't go and say something to someone. Go tell the principal. And so I had a conflicting, you know, what do I do? I don't think hitting someone is right. I think that's wrong. But at the same time, telling the principal, all that's going to do is going to have the bully coming back to you saying, you told on me. What, like, it
We're
almost
failing.
makes, yeah, it's
We're
like you
failing.
learn, yeah, all you learn is to just put up with it and just
We're
deal with it
failing.
instead of fighting back.
A school system is a mini society.
Yeah,
And education, in my opinion, it's important, but I think socialization is more important. And the
absolutely.
fact that we teach tolerance and we teach empathy, and differences are celebrated. And children, if we raise children, first of all, if we raise children in a home that parents aren't on the same page, that's not good. A house divided
No,
cannot stand alone. So I
no.
think that, I'm always, my kids are almost all married off, and my daughter just had a baby. And the one thing I reinforced with both of them, I was like, get on the same freaking page.
Yeah,
Find a page and get on it, negotiate, get on it, right? And because this kid's got to know what your values are, and also work on empathy for others. I know kids that don't have a whole lot of empathy for others, and they're young, and that is not a good sign. And there are moms out there and dads out there that want their kids to look better than everybody else's kid.
yeah.
What are we reinforcing? This idea that you're better than, you have a better backpack, you have a better car, you had a better
Yeah,
party, you have better Barbie dolls. What are we doing?
yeah, I
Oh,
know.
she doesn't like you because she's jealous of you because you have a pool and they don't.
Yeah,
Oh my God.
I know. It feels like, it's, to some degree, it feels like I'm back on, like I'm in the 1920s, where there's class systems. the rich are separated from the middle class and the poor, and
Yeah.
they don't get the same things. Like that's what it's like. It's like the girl has all the nice clothes and the fancy books and looks amazing and has great rich parents, and then there's the poor kid who barely has a lunch and has hand me down clothing, and he gets picked on because he looks different, or he doesn't have the same appearance, or he doesn't look like he has a good home. And it's like a never ending circle, and it comes from so many angles.
Yeah. So I don't think there's anything wrong with having a family that's successful and having nice things.
Yeah.
I think what's wrong is when that child thinks, or that boy thinks, he's better than.
Yeah.
So then the child who doesn't. And I think there's great value in a child that doesn't have being accepted by a child that does have. Right. So
Absolutely.
there's actually an ability to grow and expand as a society when this happens, but it has to come from the parents and social media, right? So social
Oh
media
yeah.
is a lie. It's a lie. TikTok is a lie. Instagram is a lie,
Yep.
right? So as parents, we have to be, especially young parents, because the children, like my granddaughter, being born into a TikTok, Instagram reality, to me, I'm terrified for her. But keeping the reins on her, and instilling values, and their avenue is, we're going to watch her, and we're going to see what talents emerge in her, and we're going to foster those ideas, minimize her contact with the internet,
Yep.
know that, teach her that she's going to be exposed to this, but we value this rather than that.
Absolutely.
At least try.
Yeah.
And above all, empathy for others and empathy for yourself. Because if you have empathy for others without empathy for yourself first, you're going to get taken advantage of. Empathy is abused in this society.
Yeah.
And it does. You could have someone with a sob story, and they're kicking your door in. You know, I'm hungry. Oh, okay, I'll feed, and they kick your door in. So, you always have to protect yourself first. And we can do that. And you can be a loving person. You can be a kind man. You can be a kind-hearted man. And you can even have trauma from the past and own it and not allow someone to exploit it. And the first sign that someone's exploiting it, bye.
Yeah, exactly.
Not your person. Not
Yeah.
your person, because
No.
we don't beat ourselves up for what happened to us that has shaped us and helped us become the sensitive human beings we are.
Yeah. 100%.
I will never tolerate. I am so on that, Russ. I am so aware of that now. Oh, I just shared something with you and you shit on it. Oh, you're not my person.
There you go. Yeah, I agree.
Person.
I have a friend. She had a, well, oh my God, he's already 10 now. I remember we were talking about her parenting, like what her ideas were. And she was saying that because a lot of, and I'm sure you've seen this many, many times, where the little kid, he's 2 or 3 years old, and he's coming up to like a stranger or a friend or a grandparent or an aunt, and he's shy, right? Like, and he's the aunt says hi or wants to hug, and the kid kind of shies away and hides behind the parent, and a lot of times the parent would like force the kid to acknowledge the other person and say, "What? Go hug them, don't be shy." And she was saying, if my kid doesn't want to say hi or is being shy, I'm not going to tell them to not be that way. I'm going to respect what they're feeling and how they're acting. It's there. She was teaching him from the beginning to have boundaries and to not allow people to step on you and to tell you no. Like, you look after yourself. Be
Correct.
happy for yourself. Like, and I remember hearing that and I'm going, that's awesome.
Yep.
Why would
Yep.
you force someone to do something that they're not comfortable with. Like, that's not a good way of teaching your kid how to be a happy, healthy person. Because if that's what they think when they grow up, they're going to repeat that when they're 16 or when they're 25. They're going to go, I don't like this person, I'm not comfortable, but I don't want to be rude, I don't want to be mean, so I'm going to fake it. No, if you're not happy with someone, if somebody makes you feel strange or funny, or you don't like the way they present themselves, or there's something wrong, don't force yourself into a situation. You have the right to say no. You have to respect your boundaries.
You're hitting on something super, super important, and that is your internal guidance system.
Yeah.
So if my intuition is, I don't want to hug that person, I want to reinforce that in my daughter. You don't
Yeah.
have to hug anybody. I want to reinforce that in my son. Little boys are abused a lot more than people realize. Little
Mm-hmm.
girls are abused a lot more than people realize. So, oh, you have an instinct that you don't want. I don't care if it's grandmother. My parents threw me out of my house, literally their house, when my son was probably about 3 or 4 years old, because he refused to kiss my mother. And I
Mm.
said, Ma, he doesn't want to kiss you. And I'm trying to instill the same lesson. Trust your instincts. Expecting the parent, the grandma, to be adult and like, okay, I see the value in the lesson. But my mother was too worried about what her friend thought about her grandson not kissing her.
Oh my.
How narcissistic is that?
Yeah, no kidding.
Right? So here was an opportunity for my grandson to make me look good. I hardly ever see him, but my best friend's here, and I want him to make me look like the good grandma. Get the hell out of here. Yeah, my father threw me out of the house. I
Wow.
still reinforce that lesson. You don't have to kiss anybody. You don't have to hug anybody. You trust your instincts. Now, as an adult, now this child knows that my instincts matter. My self matters. That's honoring the self. Know thyself.
Yeah,
Know thyself.
absolutely.
If you don't know yourself and you can't honor your feelings, your gut instincts, it's really hard to manifest a relationship that you want. It's really hard to manifest the career that you want, because you're being pulled all over the place because you haven't learned to honor that instinct. And that's really important, especially with CPTSD, is like, what
Yeah.
do I think? What do I feel? Separate from everybody else. And how can I navigate what do I want and self-respect in light of the fire breathing dragon, which is abandonment trauma?
Yeah.
How do I? That's courage, man. That's courage. What you're doing is so courageous, because it is, you're facing all of your shadows. You're facing all of your fears of not being good enough. And, is it me? Is this why the relationship ended? Like, you're facing all of it and you're saying, I'm enough. I'm going to be alone for a while,
Mm-hmm.
but I'd rather be alone with my inner child. And that's super, super courageous.
Yeah. It's more important to be happy by yourself and to feel confident and not allow other people to change your mind. Like,
Correct.
you
Or mess with
you
your
can
mind.
be openly willing to allow someone to show you new ideas and new thoughts, but if you feel that that's wrong or you don't agree, don't be afraid to say that. Like,
Yeah.
don't fall into to someone else's trap because they think it's important, or like, if they're not right for you, don't be afraid to walk away. Don't
Yeah.
fall for someone, or put up with someone because you're afraid to be alone, or that you
Hmm.
think it's important to have an emotional connection with someone.
Yeah. I think just to add to that, is like,
Yeah.
walk away even though you're afraid.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like, it's almost impossible, like, to not be afraid. You're going to be
Hmm.
afraid. You're going to be afraid, but see the benefit in the steps that you're taking. That the fact that you are afraid and you're choosing self is courageous. It's not
Absolutely.
about the end game. It's about the process by which you have decided once and for all, despite your trauma, despite your patterns, despite your limiting beliefs and all of that, despite all of that, you are taking steps forward. Focus on the steps. You're going to be afraid. That's what bravery is. There's no courage without fear.
Yeah.
So focus on that. I mean, when I was going through my divorce, that's what I focused on. It wasn't about, it was about, wow, I'm really doing this. I'm choosing me. And the smear campaigns are coming, the half truths are coming, the distorted perceptions are coming, the name calling is coming, courts coming, changing their school, all of that's coming. I don't know how I'm going to make ends meet. That's all coming, but I'm choosing me.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because in that space of complete newness, like when you create a thought you never created before, or you create a reality you never created before, that's where magic happens.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Magic doesn't happen in the predictable space. You know?
No. No.
No.
It's
Only
just
hell shows up in
routine.
the predictable
Yeah,
space
exactly.
in hell. So you're on the
Exactly.
verge of miracles, which I think is just beautiful. You're in the unpredictable space, and that's potential. So
Yeah.
right now, everything is possible for you. Miracles are possible in this space. They weren't possible in this space before.
Yeah. Yeah,
And that's exciting.
100%. I know, it's nice. I think like I'm aware of what may come, right? Like I'm not out of the woods just yet, so I know what exactly could happen, and when it has happened, I have faced it head on. I haven't stepped back. I haven't given up, or not given up, but like regressed. I haven't fallen back into the same old routine. I've been strong. Yeah, there is that feeling of a bit of, there's that fear, because you're trying to be true to yourself. At the same time, you know what to expect. You're sitting there going, I've seen this before. I know what's happening, and you're trying to live, face that fear and not be afraid of it. And
Yeah. Yeah.
that's a hard part, because
Yeah.
if you don't, like, you can't run away from it.
Oh,
Otherwise you
I
just,
think you could.
well, you
I think you
could.
can.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. But then if you don't face it, like, that's, I think facing it and grow and learning from it, and
Yeah.
knowing that it's okay. Like, hey, look what happened. You lived through this. You
Yeah.
got through it, and you learned, and look what the outcome was. It's amazing. It's awesome. And it's like it builds that new wall, and every piece it grows and grows and grows, and before you know it, it's like it takes nothing, you know.
Yeah.
But if you don't face it, you're never gonna grow from it. You're always gonna go back and do the same thing over and over again, because that's all you know.
Well, I think it's important. There are just some people that will hear that message and some people won't. And I think
Yeah.
that being someone who's like, and I think that separates people,
Yeah.
right? So someone who's like, I want to get on the other side of that wall. Someone who's willing to like go through boot camp, emotion. It's going to be emotional boot camp. It's going to suck.
Yeah.
But I promise you that once you let it hit you and once you go through the withdrawal, because you're going to go through a withdrawal process, and you go through
Hmm.
the one, am I right? Am I wrong? Is this the right? You're going to go through the self-doubt part of it. That's why I like to keep a journal and a timeline and specific events that when I get into that phase, it's like, no, I'm going to remember this. And that's why I chose me. That's why this has ended, just to anchor me back into reality, because emotions have a way of pulling you back into shame spirals.
Hmm.
Um, and so that's very cathartic, is to just keep a journal of a timeline of why, like in moments of mental clarity, when did I know this was over? What have friends said to me? And there are people that will actually do that work.
Yeah.
And the average, I think, in domestic violence, the average domestic abuse survivor goes back 7 times before she actually leaves.
Wow.
You know, yeah. So it's not uncommon to go back, but these anchoring ideas, these anchoring strategies, they're very helpful. Speaking into a recorder when you're clear minded about why I have to leave, and then like when the waves of abandonment come, or what am I doing here, or her birthday or a holiday or something that's emotionally triggering, you have these resources to remind yourself of why you're doing what you're doing and why you're choosing you. And
Yeah.
that's very empowering. And you do that enough, and like you wake up one day and you You go to bed and you realize, oh, I didn't think about them all day. And you're shocked. And then the next day, like, oh my God, 2 days have gone by. Before you know it, it's like, I'm feeling pretty good about myself. Like I got
Absolutely.
through
Yeah.
this.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I think I had, yeah, I think I had one fortunate advantage at at the end here of the relationship, and then to separate myself, is I have a close friend who I was hanging out with a lot, like going skating and having lunches and stuff. So,
Awesome.
and she was like, I don't have a lot of them, so it's when the occurrences happen, it's really nice,
Yeah.
and there was an emotional side to it
Right.
that was like a complete 180 from what I have been experiencing,
Yes. Yeah.
and it was such a strong, powerful, positive feeling that in a good way, it was like too much, like
Yeah.
you,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
crave it. You crave it so much that all I could think about was, I want more. I
Yeah.
want this. I want more of this. And I remember saying to a friend of mine, this is amazing. I want this. And the whole, all she said was, well, go, this is what you do. Take the good parts of this, everything that you like, that you were enjoying, and go and look for it. Find that. Like, this is what you want. This is what it feels like to have a positive, caring relationship. Even if it wasn't, an
Right.
intimate one, it's still a
Right.
caring, loving relationship that was positive, good reinforcement, encouraging, caring, like all the positives that someone
Yeah.
craves, and find that in someone.
Yeah.
And I'm like, it's just like a light bulb went off going,
Yeah.
absolutely, this is what I want.
That's awesome.
Uh,
Yeah.
yeah, it was amazing. And it was I was so fortunate to have that
Yep.
it at that time, because I was thinking to myself, if I hadn't have had that,
Yeah.
I could have gotten into a deep
Yeah.
spiral, and who knows where I would have went.
Correct. Correct. And
And I
then
wish that for on anyone.
no. I've been there, done that. It's not good.
Yeah.
Jump from one relationship to the next to avoid all that pain, and numbing myself with relationships rather than alcohol doesn't work well. It's
No.
terrible. Um, because you have to climb out of that hole, like, oh gosh, you
Yeah.
fall into another one. But for me, the light bulb moment was when I realized if a codependent and narcissist can attract one another, and it's energetic, right? It's my relationship with me, not feeling good enough and not feeling worthy and attracting that. Then I thought, well, what would happen if I really changed internally and I really honored my inner child and I really loved my inner child and I gave my inner child all the compassion and all the nurturing and I loved my inner being? What would happen if every day I woke up and I said, I love you, inner child, right? And how do you feel, inner child? It sounds a little nuts, but it works. There were
Ah, it
days where I was
does.
like, let's go, let's talking to myself. I never felt free enough to go to the park and not worry what people thought about me. We're going to the park. Grabbed an ice cream cone. Big ass girl that I am, sitting on the swing, eating an ice cream cone, not giving a crap about what anybody else thought about me, was very healing for my inner child. I was taking up space. And it was just, this feels awesome. It was liberating. It was empowering. And I realized that me loving me, I became a tuning fork. So I didn't have to go look for it. It found me.
Right.
It found me.
Absolutely.
So it
That's
was like,
amazing.
I'm going to get clear about what I want. I'm going to become it. I'm going to become it with my inner child first, and then it will come. And that's exactly what I've been married to my husband now 10 years. We've been together 13. Um,
Wow.
and it's a very respectful, mutually satisfying relationship. Doesn't have a lot of ups and downs. It's just very consistent, very respectful, but it comes from, I know, me respecting me. Like he knows I have a line and I know that he has a line.
Right.
And we don't cross that line because we love each other and we don't want to.
Absolutely.
He
Yeah.
knows what my boo-boos are, and he doesn't exploit them. I know what his boo-boos are, and I honor them. But I will tell you that neither one of us, I don't care how long we're together, have tolerance for anyone that would exploit us on any level.
Right.
So I'm ready to go. In other words, I'm here for as long as it feels good. You become some porcupine, I don't know. I'm not sleeping with a porcupine. I'd rather sleep alone, you know?
Yeah, no
So
kidding.
that's
I
it. So
agree.
so so
Okay,
that line
cool.
helps me. It really, I feel safe because I know myself. I'm not going to tolerate bullshit. I'm not going to be abused like I spent my life being abused by family members and bullies. My mother was my first bully, and that just translated into grammar school and high school.
Yeah,
Um, I'm not doing that anymore. Life's too
right.
short.
Yeah, I agree 100%. Now, one last thing just before I end here. For those who like for people who are, let's say, in their first couple of relationships, like and there are very few people who are completely healthy,
Right.
there's obviously something maybe
Absolutely.
even small. For if they What are some early signs or something that they could kind of keep an eye out for that might help them before they get caught into it too deep, that would indicate that they might be involved with someone who has narcissistic tendencies? So just so that they can avoid, possibly getting into something that it could be seriously damaging.
Yeah, I would say always hold on to yourself in any relationship moving forward. Don't become so emotionally invested in another person that you don't see them clearly or objectively. And if you can do that, if you can love someone objectively, meaning that I don't fall in love because when you fall in love, you fall on your face. I choose to love you because you've proven to me that you're not a narcissist. And so, what does that mean? So, if you have any codependency in you, make sure you're working on that. Your childhood issues, feeling of low self worth, insecurity, abandonment issues. Make sure you work on that first because you are primed to meet a narcissist. That's really important.
Yeah.
But if you're in a relationship with someone, you want to make sure that their words match their behavior. Stay objective. You want to pay attention to how they treat people that can do nothing for them. How do they treat the waitress? How do they treat the maids in a hotel? How do they treat old ladies and old men? How do they treat people that literally are just in society? Are they courteous to other people?
Hmm.
Look for signs of empathy. When one of the things that I teach my clients when we're going through scripts with dating, I'll say, so you met someone? Yeah. Or you're meeting someone? Yes. Okay, this is what you're going to do. You're going to make a comment about how you feel. Like I had a really exhausting day today. If that man or woman says, can you pass the butter? They don't pick up on the emotion that you felt. They don't hear the emotion. I had a really exhausting day. There's no follow up. What do you mean? That's a lack of empathy.
Right.
They don't care how you felt. So pay attention to how people. Now you're not looking for them to take care of your feelings because that you got to be a big girl and a big boy. And you've got to take care of your own feelings, but you want to make sure that your partner has empathy and can pick up on what you're feeling and is curious about it. So let's say that now yeah, I'm tired today. You're a school teacher. You had a really busy day, and a 3-year-old, third grader threw up all over the place, right? Now, how do they respond to your day? Well, that doesn't sound like such a bad day. You should hear about my day. You think that's tough? Well, you explain about those things. You're always complaining about those things. Why did you become a teacher in the first place if you're going to go there and complain about the kids? Huge red flag.
No kidding. Yeah.
Huge red flag. So you're really looking for, are they picking up on the emotion? And we do get on a conversation about my emotions, are they minimized? Are they devalued? If the person does something minimal, like maybe knocks over a glass of wine unintentionally, is there, oh, I'm so sorry, I'll pay for the rug? Or is this just, it's just a glass of wine? What's the big deal? Why are you overreacting? There's a lack of accountability for their actions. Even though you're human, you're going to bump over a glass of wine once in a while. But how did they respond to your reaction to spilling the glass of wine? So
Yeah.
narcissists, you can tell a narcissist by the way that they react, by their responses. You just
Absolutely.
want to make sure that you don't get caught up reacting and responding to their reaction. So you hold on to yourself and you stay in observer mode. That was a game changer for me. When I realized, and it's so interesting, I had a therapist, I was like, when am I going to know it's time to leave? And my therapist said, first of all, your tolerance for bullshit is way too high. So this person has been cutting capillaries, and one day he's just going to slice a vein, and you're going to know. And it was so interesting. We were laying in bed, and I was just gone into business with my next door neighbor. It was a party planning business. And it was all my business because I had a business prior and she just came in. So I had all these accounts, and I had did these centerpieces for a communion. And she left me a note and said, the next time ask me before you finish this order. And I thought, we're partners. It was my business first. It's my client. And I was like, first red flag was like, I'm out. I already saw the writing on the wall. So I said to her, listen, we're going to have to dissolve this business. And I just want the money that I've invested in, and we'll go our separate ways. So it ended. But when I explained that to my ex-husband, his response was, you never get along with anyone. And that was it. I was like, it's never going to change. In a moment of vulnerability, when I just invested all this money with my neighbor, now our relationship of 12 years is shot. It's in a vulnerable moment. And rather than support me, you took your foot and you stepped in my face. And it was that clear. I just turned over in bed and I said, it's never going to change. That was the artery.
Wow. There you go. Yeah.
That's a narcissist. When I tell you that something vulnerable, you exploit it. And if I'm having a good day, you got to piss on it. I started to catch that too. I'm happy. They got to bring you down. So as I learned to understand the signs, it was like I moved from being reactor to his reaction to being the observer. Yeah. Almost like watching a movie. And it was just, once I saw it, I couldn't unsee it. I was like, oh my God, I've been in it. Like we talked about earlier, I was in it. I was in the movie. Now I was observing the movie. And it was like, where have I been for 12 years?
No kidding.
Yeah. Wow. So it's very powerful.
Yeah. I think the thing that really got me when I started to understand what I was in is we'd be in an argument and I would prove a point, or I'd have a correct something that was accurate and true. And instead of being acknowledged and say, oh, you know what, you're right. That makes sense. The reaction was whatever. And then just moving on,
yeah,
exactly.
Like
no acknowledgement whatsoever. And my reaction was, okay. Like, thanks.
And what do you do with that?
Yeah.
What do you do with that? So you can't grow with the narcissist because they're not interested in growing. They're interested in dominance and control and power over. And so that's what it's dismissive.
Exactly.
Right? She couldn't counter it. And she didn't have the ability to be humble about it. Yeah. And meet you at a level playing field. And so that's where you get I would get, you're crazy, you're a wacko. That's why no one likes you. That was his whatever. It's just like, okay, the stonewalling was just, I couldn't do it anymore. So I hope this has been helpful.
Absolutely. It really has been. Okay, well, that's it for this episode, everybody. Lisa, thank you so much. This was incredible, and I was looking forward to this for such a long time.
I'm so grateful. You're awesome. Just be you. Just be you. Don't compromise. Be yourself. Love that inner child. Just love them up and be nurturing, and everything's going to be okay.
Absolutely. All right. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Bye for now.
Bye, everybody.
Okay. Wow.
Great.
And there you have it. Another episode of Living with ADHD and CPTSD. I hope this was a great episode and helpful for all of you out there listening. If you find that this kind of episode is really informative and helpful for you, then please give me a shout. Let me know what you feel and how you're thinking about this. You can get in touch with me either via email. The email address is livingwithadhd and cptsd@gmail.com. If you want to contact me on Twitter, by all means, my Twitter handle is @ADHD and CPTSD. You can also get a hold of me at Mastodon. That is a relatively new social site, kind of like Twitter. You can also go to my website, www.livingwithadhd&cptsd.ca. If you would like to help me out, whether it's donation or even becoming a member, you can go to my Patreon page. Just look for Living with ADHD and CPTSD. You can go to Ko-fi.com, that's ko-fi.com, and you can donate there any amount you feel is acceptable. It doesn't really matter. And you could also become a subscriber to Apple Podcasts, and it's a small monthly fee that you can pay to get access to episodes like this early and, other episodes that aren't available to the public. All right, everyone, that is this episode. I hope you have a great day, and I shall talk to you later. Bye, everyone.